That section was played from Inside Out, although I'm sure you already knew that. The piece is always present at an important part of the story that the filmmakers want you to remember, to have an emotional connection with what's going on. It was composed by Michael Giacchino, who also did the themes for Incredibles and Up. All of these are a perfect example of what a great film score should be like. It triggers a very strong emotion that the audience will always associate with that film every time they hear it. It's part of what helps make these Pixar films so nostalgic and so heartwarming, because no matter how old you are, whenever you hear a piece from these films, it brings out the same way you felt when the first time you heard it. Music in film is extremely important. An iconic score, like Inside Out's or Up's, can enhance the emotional experience to a huge level if done well. The more memorable the score, the more memorable the film. The theme to Jaws brings out all the suspense. And who doesn't feel a rush of nostalgia whenever they hear the Harry Potter melody? It's that magic behind a great film score that I want to explore today. The main purpose of music is to help build empathy with the characters. With a bad soundtrack, you are less likely to care about the people in the movie. So a composer must capture emotion really well. The best kind of score is one that can make you feel something without knowing the visuals or context even being present. Hans Zimmer wrote the score for Interstellar knowing nothing about the characters, nothing about the story, and didn't even know what genre the film was. All he knew was that the film was centered around a man's connection with his son, and that's all he needed, creating an amazing soundtrack that seems perfect for the film, and Interstellar would surely be incomplete without it. Hans Zimmer commented on this method, saying, "This score was not something crafted to complement the images on the screen. It was crafted to represent the personal relations of the artist. See, a film score's intention should be to only try and capture the emotional connection, what drives the protagonist to do what he does, so that he can always be empathized or related with on some level." Another film that captures the emotional connection amazingly is the score of Star Wars. One of the most memorable and recognizable moments of the first film is Luke staring off at the sunset. It's created by an amazing piece of music full of hope and wonder, capturing Luke's emotions perfectly. Now this was him at the start of his journey, the viewer just learning of Luke's desire to venture off into space. So throughout the film, we then get to see him achieve these things that he wished for, and so at the end of the film, with the medal ceremony, this is now his highest point, and it is here that the tune returns. By playing the same melody that was used at the start of Luke's journey here, this makes our brains recall that moment and how different the landscape was for Luke when he stared off into the sunset, only dreaming of what he now has. From this example of music, we can then see how change or growth of a character can be met with a huge emotional impact when a piece of music returns with a different context. Another thing scores can bring attention to is certain themes or ideologies displayed on screen.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
In the gangster movie Goodfellas, they often play relaxing, calm, and cheerful music alongside or after excessive violence. This helps show how the gangsters are desensitized to violence as they've grown accustomed to it in their daily lives. If anything, it's glamorized. The psychopaths this film revolves around loving it. This technique helps introduce us to the perspective of America's finest. Lobster also uses music to get across the film's ideas, as the music is extremely repetitive, bland, and uninspired. If anything, it takes the emotion out of the movie. So how is this a good soundtrack? Well, because it captures the themes and the feelings of the characters so well. The movie attempts to talk about a man in a world that is very systematic about what you can or cannot enjoy. These rules in place keeping David from being happy, and so he and the people around him are so monotone and uninterested in the process. As the world lacks any magic or real love. Because of this, the repeated violin strikes powerfully gets the feelings the filmmaker intended. The soundtrack to Lobster not only immerses us into the world and how the main characters feel, but at the same time expresses the film's core message. You see, what a film score does best is allow the viewer to feel emotions of a character, introduce the themes the filmmakers intended to explore, and mark certain key plot points in a story. However, there is another crucial detail many overlook. Somebody who helped point out this overlooked step to creating a great film score is Merkel, who writes and edits his own great video essays about film scores on the channel The Music of the Movies. He actually agreed to come on to explain what makes a good soundtrack and an unsuccessful soundtrack by comparing two M. Night Shyamalan movies, Unbreakable and Split. So I'll let you listen to that.
First off, if you haven't seen Split yet, pause the video. I mean it. What we're about to do is going to ruin your experience. Okay, ready? So what's the deal with Split? Well, first off, it's worth noting that this is one of the few films, especially in recent history, that wasn't composed by James Newton Howard. As an audience, that of course leaves us with the inevitable comparisons. So let's start there. What do we hear? As I've said in my own channel, James Newton Howard is a formidable force in the world of movie scoring, with strong emotive scores to back up his equally powerful mood-setting moments. Split, however, was composed by relative newcomer West Dylan Thorson. One of the most noticeable difference I caught on too quickly is the absence of any unique emotional melodies within Split. Where The Sixth Sense and Unbreakable had recognizable and unique melodies, the emotional core components of Split really came down to minor chord progressions and standard instrumentation, almost like someone had checked the boxes one normally would to illustrate emotion or story. You want to make it sad? Use some strings or piano and play it softly in a minor key. It's not that these methods don't make any sense, they do. The issue is that they are predictable and boring. They don't challenge the audience, and they don't tell their own story, and they certainly don't encourage isolated listening. I can't recall one melody in all of Split that I would walk out of the theater, at least internally, humming in my head. So, without diving too deep or long, what could have been done different? Before we answer that, and since I gave you fair warning on the spoiler alert of this movie, we find out at the end that this takes place within the same universe as the film Unbreakable. Before we are even shown Bruce Willis at the end of the movie, I knew exactly what was happening, because the theme to Unbreakable started to play. The theme composed by James Newton Howard. Recognizable enough that I knew exactly what was going on. Out of the ho-humness of the score, this stuck out like a sore thumb. It also brought up an interesting idea. Why didn't the composer for Split take the score to Unbreakable and perhaps alter it? presented in a new way to use. So rather than the gimmicky, throw it in there approach they ended up with, maybe it would give the score a bigger purpose while providing the much-needed emotional core to exist. I think that would be a very interesting approach and would encourage repeat listening as well. I don't mean to make it sound like Split is horrible. The movie itself is actually really good, but the score was weak. It was maybe weak because of it being compared to the scores that James Newton Howard had done in the past for all the M. Night Shyamalan movies. So it may be slightly of an unfair comparison, but I think it's important to understand what makes these scores good and bad and how they can change them. Just my 2 cents.
John brought up an interesting point about most modern film scores. Unbreakable is by far the more memorable and superior score, while Split, despite doing several things right with displaying emotion, still came out as mediocre. Why? Well, because they missed out on making something iconic, a unique melody, one that gives personality. You can make music feel a certain way and it will fit well, but to truly make something that will build a true emotional connection, you must go the extra mile. Look to Social Network or Jaws. These films capture the emotion while also making a catchy theme that can stay in your head, hence the entire film leaves a lasting impact. Look at the movie Batman vs Superman. Barely any music there managed to create a unique melody, resulting in an underwhelming experience for most people. Without giving these mighty characters an equally mighty theme, nothing amped up my excitement. You know what did? Wonder Woman's theme song appears and really sticks out, mainly because it's one of the few times a superhero actually had a good superhero theme. Now, it doesn't actually pay off because there's no investment or care put into Wonder Woman's character, but when it was used in her own movie, man, did it kick ass. And then let's look at film trailers. Mainstream marketing teams don't really rely on a good score to use, but instead feature an already successful mainstream song instead of a unique piece. Now this technique will attract an audience, but not invest an audience. What does the song Sabotage add to Star Trek Beyond? Nothing. And so without an iconic theme, that film has not been loved or remembered as much as say Jaws or Interstellar or Social Network. These trailers get attention, but does anybody ever get an emotional reaction? I don't think so. You know what did? The Force Awakens trailer had many people literally tear up because of the music that played. And the reason why is pretty clear. It brought people back to when they first heard that music. They remembered going on a journey with Luke Skywalker. They remembered the locations, the twists, the characters. They remembered being a kid again. Music brings you to another world. It's a tool that you just can't take for granted. It's the reason we don't just enjoy movies, but we fall in love with them.